years, and kind of several people today have said, I say, how are you? And they say, I'm so stressed. Stressed about what? They said, the world. So I've seen a lot of the world. And what I've learned from seeing the world is the more you go to see, the more people are just like us. They're people. They're all trying to live. They're all trying to get along. And yet there's always this commotion. And look at some of the pictures. Some are from China. I've been there 3 times, I think. So when I was a kid in school, there were always big maps of the world on the bulletin board going through school. China was this big blob. We had geography classes, we had history classes. They didn't talk much about China. It didn't exist. It was off limits. Soviet Union, great big bomb. Kind of mentioned because of the Cold War. We had to learn how to dive under our desk in case the A-bomb would go off. But you didn't learn much about it because it was off limits. Things come and go. Now you can go to China. You can go to what used to be the Soviet Union. Other places you can't go. I have no pictures of Iran here, but Iran's gorgeous. The people are nice. You won't believe it by listening to the news, but anyway, there's wonderful things to see and do there. You can't go now. Things are changing, but I believe truly they always have changed. It's the way the world is. It's unfortunate, but there's never been, yes, we could be very stressed if we pay that much attention to the news. But if we had had news outlets or so-called news, 1,000 years ago, we'd be stressed. Those people would have been stressed. So, kind of let it go and think, it's our world, it's got beautiful things, look at them, see them, snap them. Nowadays, all of you are so-called photographers. Like me, I'm not a photographer, but you've got these gadgets, and all of us can push the little thing and look and keep a memory. And these are memories. For me, I didn't ever take them to show them. It's the first time I've ever been asked to do an exhibit. It's the first time more than 3 people have ever looked at them. And I have thousands of pictures. They represent my experience. I said, oh, that flower is beautiful, or oh, look at that mountainscape, or whatever I say, I'll snap that, and I keep it as a memory. And if I go through them, it brings back ideas. When I look at these pictures, I see them remembering where I was, what was going on, what it smelled like, what it felt like, what the thinking was. When you look at them, they're just pictures of something. Whether they interest you or not, I don't know, because, you haven't spoken out yet, most of you. So I don't know if they're worth looking at, or if they're, oh, why did I come here? It's a gorgeous day out. Why am I wasting my time? Anyway, speaking about wasting time, they say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I think I've said 1,000 words, but there are about 100 pictures here, so it's time for you to go look at them. That's the end of my remarks.
Does anyone have any questions for them that you'd like to ask right now? Jody.
Tell us how you got to Dummerston.
I came to Dummerston as a Peace Corps trainee in 1964, July 1964. I signed up to join the Peace Corps, and at that time, in order to become a Peace Corps volunteer, you had to go through a training period of 3 months. And it turned out that my 3 months was in Dummerston, Vermont. I'd never been to Vermont. I was as close as Massachusetts because my mother grew up there, and we would go see her family. But I'd never been to Vermont, and I was stuck for 3 months at Camp Arden, on Camp Arden Road. Camp Arden doesn't exist anymore, but Camp Arden on Camp Arden Road. There's a couple of pictures from that period. And I fell in love with this concept called Vermont. To me, it was like, wow, look at this. And I told people, I said, someday I'm going to be back here. Someday I'm going to be able to do that. And after my Peace Corps experience, one of the people who was in Peace Corps with me came back and married the guy who had been in charge of our training program. And he was working for what was then called the Experiment for International Living, it's now SIT. And he had bought, because he was living here, working here, a little one-room school, defunct one-room schoolhouse. And the woman, I met him and the woman who became his wife on the same first day of our Peace Corps training. She and I were trainees, and when she came back, she married the guy. And they already had this little house here. And I'd come up on occasion and visit my friends in their little Dummerston house. And every time I came, I'd see a for sale sign on the house and say, oh, I wonder what's that one's like. And oh, look, there's an ad for an open house. I'm gonna go. And my friends Tom and Lou was Betty Lou, but we called her Lou. Lou was from North Carolina and had a very heavy North Carolina accent. And she'd say, Liam, you want to do this weekend while you're here? I said, well, I see there's a, Liam, when are you going to buy a house? You're never going to buy a house here. And one time we were driving through Dummerston and she says, Liam, see that house up on the hill? I said, yeah, what about it? Well, it's a nice house. I says, so what about it, Lou? Well, I met the people who live there. That's nice. What about it? She says, well, the lady who lives there, her mother or mother-in-law lives in town. I said, well, that's really nice that they're so close by. She said, well, that's not the point. I said, well, what's the point, Lou? Get to the point. She said, well, Mama said, the woman says that someday Mama's gonna move to a nursing home. I said, oh. She said, and then that lady's gonna move into Mama's house. I said, so what is the whole thing coming to? She said, well, that house might someday be, you know, a house to look at. I said, you let me know, Lou, if that ever happens. And about 3 years later, I get this call. I'm down in New Jersey, and I get this call. Liam. So, what, Lou? She says, that house. I said, what house? What house? She says, well, the house on the hill. It might be up for sale. I said, Lou, pretty much every house in Vermont is that house up on the hill. What house, you know, what house? She said, well, it's that one on the hill near us. I said, oh, where the lady's mama's gonna move in the nursing home? Yeah, she moved. I said, well, is the place for sale? She says, well, I don't know exactly. I said, well, do you think so? She says, well, I think so. I said, well, who are these people? I'll call them up. And I ended up owning that house on the hill, walkable distance to Lou and her husband Tom, walkable distance to Camp Arden, where I did my Peace Corps training. So I came back to my little place that I said, someday I'm going to be here, to my Vermont. And look at this, half this audience are very young people. I know. It's wonderful. That's how I came to be here, Jody.
Well,
glad you did.
Any other questions for?
You're not a photographer, obviously, but what kind of camera did you use? Do you remember anything about the film or anything that's, did the camera always work? Or?
The camera worked, but the guy who operated it didn't. Sometimes his finger was in front of the lens. I started out with something called a Konica, Konica, and I got that because I knew I was maybe going to be accepted into the Peace Corps and I would be traveling, so I thought it'd be nice to take some pictures of where I was so my family could see these pictures. So it was a little 35 millimeter camera. It didn't have an adjustable anything lens. It had a place where you could put little cubes that would flash, but I never learned. I only used those cubes once. There was one box, I think they sold like 8 in a box, and I used them up. Mostly I ruined them. I used them up once, and that was the end of the last time I ever did a flash. And after the Konica period, at one point I had a Nikon. It wasn't a very complex one. It wasn't a big, heavy one because I can't carry big, heavy. And then I went down to, there's my current one, this little Sony. It's very easy to carry around. It's quite simple, but it has a lens that, you know, can get as close as up to your face right here. And it's a digital. The world changed. First I was using film, and my first 2 years of taking pictures really was in Afghanistan. And they didn't have cameras, and they didn't have camera stores, and they didn't have much of anything. In Kabul, there was one store that sold film, and you could buy the film and take your pictures, and I was living in Kandahar, which is a good distance away. But every 3 months they brought us into Kabul for medical checkups. So I'd take my pictures, I'd bring the film back to that store, and they would send it to Germany to get developed. It was slides. They would send it to Germany to get developed, and then maybe 3 months, sometimes it was the 2 periods that I'd go back, and they got them back from Germany, and I didn't have a slide, no one had a slide projector. And I'd look at the little slides like this up at the sun and say, "Ooh, that one looks like it came out." It was hard to know. And I never was frustrated until we came to the digital age, when I discovered that you take the picture and you can look at it right away and say, "Oh, I took it wrong. I didn't like that angle." And now you change it. And those days, film days, you took a picture and it took a while till you got it back and saw it. And you really didn't know for a long time that event was done. Those people were gone, the thing is finished, you were in another place. So it's a different way now of taking, we can do this instant stuff and really be satisfied with what we get. Back then, if I did it wrong, it was wrong, period. In fact, some of these are wrong. Josh is not here, so I can say this. So, to do this exhibit, I needed some help, and it's in my little blurb about this thing. And I went to the Vermont Center for Photography and asked Josh Farr, who's the director of it, I said, "Josh, could you print these things for me?" They asked me to do an exhibit. And he says, "Sure, what's the focus of your exhibit?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you're supposed to have a focus for an exhibit." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, well, like a topic. I said, there's no topic, these are just pictures. He said, you know, sort of think about what they are. So I said, well, there's a bunch of faces and a bunch of places. It's faces and places, that's the name of this exhibit. and then he said, well, you know, send them to me, and they're all digital, and send them by digital. And when I went to see what he was going to print, he had chosen, I sent him a whole bunch. And he had, Winnie, you know, weeded out some. I said, why'd you pick that one? He says, well, it's interesting. I said, why didn't you pick that one? He said, it's not focused. I said, but it's a picture I like. What? I don't see anything wrong with it. He said, it's really quite not focused. So those professional guys see the pictures differently from me. There's a picture back there on the wall. It's one of my favorites in this group, of a woman with a sort of a red rose here, and this face that you just keep looking at and saying, what was, in fact, that's probably why I took the picture. I saw this lady outside of the square in Mexico. What is going on with that woman? I mean, she was just intensely inside herself. Something's going on. And Josh had put it aside. And I said, I like that picture. He says, not focused. I said, well, I like it, so it's going in the exhibit. So, you know, things that I see or that maybe you see are not what other people see. Depends how you look at it. Yes, sir.
So you have a picture from Bukhara and a picture from Samarkand. And those all seem like very exotic, strange places. What can you say anything about your time or what you saw when you were in Bukhara and Samarkand? And they didn't become part of any big country until much later.
There have always been parts of a big country. All these places have existed.
Oh, yes.
You know, and they're all part of history. I mean, that, you know, Uzbekistan, or whatever you want to call it, Turkmenistan. All these places have existed, they just have different names applied to them. I just, you know, I like to travel. There's a lot of places I haven't been yet. I don't think I'll be getting to a lot of them. But it's, to me, it's, you know, let me go and see and learn and find out. And my brother, who's not a traveler, he loves looking at my pictures. He says, oh, that looks really good. He said, yeah, but you're not smelling what I smelled when I took that. You have to experience it. So if any of you, you know, have an urge to do that, and you're able to, go and do and see. Even around here, when you're walking around, think, you know, oh, look at that. It's really quite a sight. It's something. And when I was in 1964, when I was in Peace Corps training, I took a picture of our little West Dummerston post office. Well, who knew? But now I have a P.O. box there, and every day I'm there to pick up my mail. It was a general store then. Who knew? You know?
I want to talk about that picture that you had a hard time getting into the show. The woman with
It wasn't
the
a
red.
hard time.
Well, you had to
tossed.
push for it.
Yeah.
And I think it's a perfect example of what's wrong with a lot of the art done in Vermont, in this area. That is, they think about technique. They do not think about content. That's one of maybe my favorite picture. And I'm surprised, and I'd love to hear that you had a problem because it was slightly out of focus, which he could probably tweak to some extent, because it's fine, because it reads, and it has a depth to it that a lot of others don't
There's
have.
that depth word. But, well, you're right, and Josh is terrific. I mean, he really appreciated the picture, But when he was going through them, he would point out things as a technician that I would never ever think about.
Well, that's the problem. You shouldn't look at it as a technician.
But he
You
was,
should
because-
only look for the
Well, but
content.
he was doing it for me to make these prints. And honestly, I appreciated his remarks because he was making the prints. So he could tell me what's wrong and I could say, I like it anyway. Too bad.
Can I just say that we had no problem with that image. I think it's one of the best. We loved it, yeah.
Jody again.
Oh, I've got lots of questions. That man in the middle row with a big, big smile on his face.
Yes.
Were you telling him a joke or something when you took the picture?
No, that man is a fortune teller. And I took that picture in Mazar Sharif in Afghanistan. And there was a crowd of people somewhat similar to you, except they have no chairs there, so they were all on the ground, which is normal. They were all sitting there. And that man was standing there, and he had a little, like a notebook. And someone would say, 22. He would turn to page 22. And supposedly he was reading what was on page 22 as their fortune. I'm not sure the man could read, because 99% of the people in Afghanistan back then could not read. But anyway, he did, and then he was laughing. I have 2 or 3 pictures in sequence of him reading, and I have a picture of the group. And then he was just laughing at what had come out of that thing and the joke. And I think it's a great picture. I gave it to my dentist once. Yes, sir.
Did you very often get pushback from people you were taking pictures of?
Very, very rarely.
Really?
Really very rarely. Because in a lot of, back in the old days, back in Afghanistan, for example, people had no clue that you were taking the picture. They didn't know what the thing was in your hand. They had no cameras. They had no concept. Literary concepts that we have, or photography concepts. I took a picture of a fellow who worked for me, young guy, a photograph of his face. And after it came back, it was developed on black and white print. And I showed it to him. I said, here, look. He's looking and looking. These things can be a bother. Anyway, he's looking at it and turning it this way and this way. And I said, well, what do you think? I don't know. Well, Mr. Len, what? I said, it's a person, and you know this person. He's looking and looking and looking. He says, Mr. Len, I don't know this person. I said, you do know this person. He said, I took the picture from an angle, so like, yeah. He said, I don't know anyone who only has one ear. I said, it's you. This is a picture of you. That's how different, if you don't have this kind of thing around you, if you don't learn about pictures or visual things, that was the concept. So quite often in the old days, in those places, you could take pictures in any way you wanted, and they didn't know you were taking a picture. More recently, people are much more familiar with the fact that there's cameras around. Most often I don't ask people for their permission. I just snap and hope I get away with it. Once or twice people have said, what are you going to do with that? Or, don't take my picture, okay? I won't take any more. Or I won't take your picture. I already got it in the camera. Yes, sir.
Could we ask if you would take a picture of all of us here?
I'd
right
love
now?
to take a picture of all of
That would be great. Would you mind? Can we get us all in?
No. Oh, yes.
How about from one end of the room?
From one end of the room to the other, I could.
We'll watch the artist at work here.
Panorama.
I don't know. No, I can't. You know, I know the cameras do that. And Josh told me, this camera's very sophisticated. But I don't know that. So Josh was looking and was saying, you know, this is kind of a little fuzzy. He said, you ought to take it with a good camera. I said, I think my camera's supposed to be good. And I brought it in to show him. He says, it's really a good camera with you know, good digitals and all that stuff. But there's a way to improve it. I have no clue. I've been using this for years. It goes snap, snap, snap. And, you know. You get the picture too?
Yes, sir.
This group of people, wow. And the problem with this group is I'm only going to get one ear on each of you.
The 1 ear club.
This is not the way to do it. Turn toward me and smile or do something. Snap, snap, snap. Jody,
what?
It's a more town meeting.
You have so many pictures of so many beautiful people. I mean, it's amazing.
People are beautiful.
They are. And I wonder, there's a young man over on that side I want to bring home. Is he available?
Which one?
A very handsome man over on the right-hand side of that picture.
I'm standing right next to Paul, so
He's probably not with us anymore.
Was he that old back then? Doesn't look it.
It was taken probably in '65. Medical care and things. I mean, here I'm looking at a very youthful crowd.
Oh, you're being very nice.
Which if we took the average age of this group here, that would be unusually high over there.
But I'm looking at some women and some kids and other men, and they're just beautiful people. From
People are,
wherever.
I'm looking at no kids. Men and women here, and you know, every one of you guys would be a great picture. That's the way it is.
I know Len has taken many from the calendar, right?
Yeah.
Would you consider selling these photographs?
Say yes. I mean, I could give them away. I don't need to sell them.
Donate the money to the Historical Society.
Oh, well, that would be an idea. Chuck?
I think what touches me most, you take pictures from the heart,
Yeah.
and to me, that is, means a lot.
I take pictures if I see something that I think that's interesting to me, or that's beautiful, or it's ugly. But look at it, it's a really weird thing. Picture.
I just want to say, you take pictures, but you tell stories with your pictures, which I love. And it would be great if somehow you could document those stories, because like hearing about Afghanistan and different places, and you talked to my husband about the Taj Mahal, for instance, it's just so interesting that at that point in time, you had that perspective and, you know, where we were in the world. I know it's a big ask, but, you know, it's really the stories that, I mean, they're beautiful, but you know behind every picture is a memory and a story. And
That,
that's really cool. Yeah.
that was hard when I was asked to do this, because I'm looking at each picture I looked at, oh, this was this and that was that. And I remember when she, you know, said something, blah, blah, blah. And when I look at pictures in magazines or anywhere else, someone else's pictures, it's a picture to me, and it's, you know, does something to me. Where was that, and what was that? But I don't have the same involvement, engagement
Right.
with it. So these are
I
in
mean,
a
it's
form
a
of my diaries.
60-year, you know, perspective on things, so it's not like you just went there to
Yeah.
Mexico, you know.
I didn't just go to snap that picture.
Right, yeah.
Yes, sir.
And what attracted you to the woman with the blue shawl? That is
That's
the most
the jacket.
jacket, okay.
Chuck's competing with her. He's got a blue jacket. First of all, the blue jacket attracted me. There was like a electric blue,
Yeah.
and she was sitting in this, on the street.
right below.
The picture right below it, on the right-hand side, there she is. She and, I guess, a friend or a neighbor of hers were sitting, and the other woman had a little table of stuff to sell. But the electric blue, I just looked, what's that? And then I saw that face, and I said, wow. There's a snapshot. So I snapped.
Done a beautiful job. Snapping.
Right, well, Len, thank you for sharing.
I have to thank the Historic Society, I guess, for bringing all you people here. How much did they pay you?
It's our pleasure to share your photographs with our community, and thanks so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
And Len will be here, and yeah, if you've got a minute, chat with him. Let's start.
One more thing to say, actually, the Camp Arden thing. So I was here for 3 months in '64 for my Peace Corps training, and then for 2 years off in Afghanistan being a Peace Corps volunteer. And the 25th year after we were here for training, I and some others, including you, put together a reunion of my group. And we did it, we stayed at Grafton, and we came down to see Camp Arden and walk around and stuff. And then we did another one. We were planning on one for our 50th anniversary. And dear Lou said, Len, why do we have to wait? We should do it now. The people are getting old. Some aren't with us anymore. Let's do it now. So a couple years before it would have been our 50th reunion, we did another reunion. Not as many people came, but it was a good reunion. And for that reunion, I put together, based on a slideshow that had been done for our 25th reunion, I put together a little video thing about our training period and our experience. And by then, you could do things with voices. So people talked about why they had joined the Peace Corps and stuff. We showed that video here a few years ago, about 5 years ago maybe even more than that, because Lou was gone then, but Tom was still living in town. And it's now actually, if you would like to see a half-hour show about what the Peace Corps was like in Afghanistan and in Camp Arden and Dummerston, you can email me and I will send you a link to that video and you can look at it at home. It's a half hour's worth of sitting. So,
Well, thank you all very much for coming today. Yes, the artist will be here to the reluctant artist.
But as you take a look at it, you're welcome to do that. I took
Sheila.
That's all.